Is she the biggest draw in women's tennis right now?
Yes.
Is she bigger than Sabalenka? Is she bigger than Coco?
Dude, it's crazy. She's having the same effect that Fonseca was having, like, on the men's side.
She has more confidence and she goes for her shots without any doubt, I would say.
This was definitely one of the bigger Filipino turnouts. Also New York was huge. It also depends what court you're on, that you feel the noise and things.
6 hours before her match even started, they were already lined up outside. Filipino flags, fan club t-shirts, and a cold desert night that couldn't push them home. These are the fans the tennis world just called classless. Let that sit for a second. Coco Gauff acknowledged them in Dubai. Novak Djokovic called their energy a good problem to have. The BNP Paribas Open literally said, "We love every minute of it."
I know you were mostly supporting Alex, but I have to say it is great to be on a crowded court. I've played this tournament for many years, and to see the stadium full, it means a lot. And also, like to thank Alex for bringing a new demographic to the sport. I really appreciate
having too much crowd on this or any other tennis tournament is a very good problem to have.
Yet somewhere between Eala's historic Indian Wells round of 16 debut and her stunning 6-2, 2-0 march past a struggling Gauff on March 8th, a section of the tennis community decided passion from the Philippines needed to be policed. And one expert absolutely refused to let that go unchallenged. They clapped back, and what they said cut straight to the core of what this sport claims to stand for. If you're someone who actually wants the full picture, not the sanitized version, subscribe before this ends, because the real story here goes much deeper than supporters.
It's hard to imagine that now because we're so far removed from it that it's almost hard to say I want to be number one. Little did I know that I would,
Of course, the atmosphere in each tournament has been amazing, and it's been a different start this year than any other year I've ever had.
And classless accusations. Where exactly did this controversy begin, and how did it escalate to this level? It started in Melbourne, January 2026, Australian Open, Court 6. Eala walked out for her first-round match against American Alicia Parks, and what happened next genuinely caught the tennis world off guard. The court was packed beyond capacity. Hundreds more were turned away at the entrance because there simply wasn't room. The officials hadn't anticipated it. They'd put a player who was rapidly becoming the most talked-about name in women's tennis on one of the smaller show courts, and the crowd made them pay for that miscalculation immediately. Now here's the part that lit the fuse. Eala's supporters weren't just loud, they were cheering Parks' errors. Double faults, missed shots, unforced mistakes. Every single one was met with eruption from the stands. Parks lost the first set 6-0. She was visibly shaken, seen in tears during changeovers. She later admitted exactly what had gone wrong. It was very difficult. I was expecting it, but I wasn't. I was just so focused on the crowd in the first set, which is why it went the way it went. Parks eventually pulled herself together and won the match 0-6, 6-3, 6-2. One of the more remarkable mental comebacks you'll see at a Grand Slam, but the conversation that exploded on social media afterward had nothing to do with her resilience. It had everything to do with whether the Filipino crowd had gone too far. The criticism was sharp and immediate. Tennis etiquette has long held one unwritten rule above almost everything else. You celebrate your player, but you do not cheer the opponent's mistakes. That's the line. Cheering mid-point, making noise during rallies, erupting when someone double faults. Those are behaviors the tennis community associates with football crowds, not the All England Club. And many felt that line had been crossed in Melbourne, loudly and repeatedly. Words like disrespectful started circulating. Then classless appeared and it stuck. The Filipino community pushed back hard. One response that went viral captured their position clearly. That is how we celebrate and support one of our own on the world stage. Why conform to the standards of people from other countries? That's not deflection, that's a genuinely interesting cultural argument. Tennis etiquette was largely shaped by European traditions in environments that looked and sounded very different from the communities now discovering the sport through Eala. The rules of crowd behavior that feel obvious to longtime tennis fans are not obvious to someone attending their first professional match. Fired up by national pride, watching someone carry their flag on the biggest stage their country has ever been represented on.
The first set, forgettable from her point of view, but sets 2 and 3, she really did turn it on. As ever, Alexander.
Final shot that with a little complexity. Alexandra Eala breaking in the first game of the match.
All the emotions are coming because the tension was so high, especially during that second set. She's a great opponent, obviously being top 10 and a former champion here. So to be able to compete with her at this level is a great achievement for me.
Eala herself was careful in how she addressed it. She acknowledged that some of the support had been overwhelming, particularly during practice sessions. It's a process to take it all in. I think this week definitely there were elements that were a bit overwhelming, especially during my practices. I didn't expect that many people to be there, so it's a learning process. That phrase, learning process, is significant. She wasn't condemning her fans. She was contextualizing the moment honestly, recognizing that a brand new audience was finding its footing inside a sport with very specific unwritten codes. That nuance got completely buried under the word classless. And that's the word that followed Eala's supporters all the way to Indian Wells. By the time the BNP Paribas Open arrived in early March 2026, the Filipino fan presence had grown even larger. Over 1.7 million Filipinos live in California alone, and thousands of them turned Indian Wells into something the tournament's own executives described as transformative.
Eala from the Philippines could be the next big thing in pro tennis.
This was a massive spot to be in for such a young talent, to have a sold-out crowd completely behind.
To do well on the WTA Tour. I'm super proud of what I was able to accomplish, but the end goal is to win slams.
And now she's made history in a major way, not just for herself, but for her country and for the next generation watching.
She's coming from Philippines, which is now a big deal. She's been the biggest ever, tennis player.
Lines formed 6 hours before second round matches. Practice sessions were standing room only. The day in the life video that Indian Wells posted featuring Eala became the tournament's most watched YouTube content of the entire 2026 event, and it wasn't remotely close. Indian Wells executive Philippe Dor didn't hedge when asked about it. His answer was 3 sentences. We love every minute of it. We benefit from it. We promote it. That is a tournament official speaking, someone whose job is literally to protect the experience of every attendee and every player. And his verdict on Eala's fanbase was unambiguous celebration. But the classless crowd online hadn't gone anywhere. When Eala's round of 16 match against Linda Noskova was assigned to Stadium 1, the main show court, while the match between world number 6 Amanda Anisimova and world number 10 Victoria Mboko was placed on the smaller Stadium 2, a fresh wave of criticism erupted. The argument was that the tournament was prioritizing popularity and ticket revenue over competitive merit, that 2 players ranked significantly higher than Eala were being pushed aside because her fans bought more seats. Some of that criticism was legitimate scheduling debate, but it got tangled up very quickly with the older accusation that Eala's crowd was the problem, that the tournament was rewarding behavior that should have been corrected after Melbourne.
Star Alex Eala takes center stage at the BNP Paribas Tennis Paradise in Indian Wells, and of course, Filipino fans turn out in full force to cheer her on.
Of course, I'm very grateful for all the support that's been coming my way, and it's really heartwarming to see that they really they make the effort and they take the time to come out and to support, and it makes the experience for the player totally different.
This is the environment in which the expert clapped back, and the identity of that expert matters here. Coco Vandewaega is not a commentator who spent her career watching from the sidelines. She's a former top 10 player, a Grand Slam doubles champion, someone who played professional tennis at the highest level for over a decade and now analyzes the sport on Tennis Channel. She has standing to speak on what tennis crowds should look like, what they mean to players, and what actually helps the sport grow versus what damages it. Speaking on Tennis Channel Live at Indian Wells, Van de Wege watched footage of Eala spending time with her fans after a match, signing autographs, taking photographs, engaging personally with hundreds of people who had waited for hours to see her. And she pushed back directly on the narrative that had been building since Melbourne. This is so great for tennis in general, I think, having players like Alex out there, Van de Wege said. She's so gracious to all her fans, she spends time with her fans, signs the autographs, takes the photos, and really just shows the Filipino community that it is all about the Philippines, and such a young woman that has that wisdom of just what it means to play for her country. Read that carefully. Van de Wege wasn't just complimenting Eala, she was reframing the entire conversation. The classless accusation had been aimed at the crowd, at the behavior in the stands, at the noise and the cheering of errors. Van de Wege redirected attention to what was actually happening between Eala and her supporters. A player who understood her responsibility to a community that had never had anyone to root for at this level, and who was handling that responsibility with remarkable maturity for a 20-year-old.
She's being told X, Y, and Z, and I don't think.
I told her before the match, I don't mind if you win or lose.
Tennis ace Alex Eala has officially broken into the WTA top 40.
Christopher Eubanks, another former ATP pro now working as an analyst, added a different but equally important dimension. Rather than dwelling on the controversy, he focused on the logistical reality of what Eala's popularity meant going forward. We saw it in Australia. There were mobs and lines of people to make it to her side courts. Hopefully, we're able to get her on a big court so everyone is able to stay safe around the grounds, because there's going to be a large number of fans coming to support. His framing treated the fan frenzy not as a problem to manage, but as a challenge to accommodate, a fundamentally different posture than classless. Roddick called it the type of story you cheer for because it's great for tennis. Djokovic said having too many fans at a tournament is a good problem to have. Gauff, who lost to Eala's crowd noise before she lost to Eala's tennis in Dubai, publicly thanked them and credited Eala with bringing a new demographic to the sport.
I know you were mostly supporting Alex, but I have to say it is great to be on a crowded court. I've played this tournament for many years, and to see the stadium full, it means a lot. And also, like to thank Alex for bringing a new demographic to the sport. I really appreciate it.
So here is the picture that emerges when you stack all of this together honestly. A player from a country with zero tennis infrastructure broke into the top 32 in the world. She brought with her an entirely new audience, people who had never watched a WTA match, never attended a tournament, never knew what a tiebreak was, and turned them into passionate, traveling, ticket-buying fans who fill arenas at 11 p.m. on a cold night in the California desert. Some of those fans, new to the sport's specific culture and etiquette, cheered at moments they weren't supposed to cheer. That is real, it happened, and it's fair to note it. But calling that crowd classless, and then using that label to argue that their energy is a problem for tennis, rather than one of the most genuinely exciting developments the women's tour has seen in years, is where the argument falls apart completely. The experts who clapped back understood something the critics missed. Tennis desperately needs exactly what Eala's supporters represent. New fans, new noise, new passion, new markets, and yes, new growing pains that come with all of it. A sport that has spent decades worrying about declining attendance and aging demographics suddenly has thousands of first-generation tennis fans lining up 6 hours early and refusing to leave when the temperature drops at midnight. The word classless was never the right one. What Van de Wege, Eubanks, Roddick, and Djokovic recognized, and what the critics chose to ignore, is that what's happening around Alexandra Eala right now is the kind of energy that cannot be manufactured, cannot be marketed into existence, and absolutely cannot afford to be policed away. If this video gave you a perspective worth thinking about, drop a comment below with your take. Are Eala's fans crossing a line, or is tennis finally getting the passionate crowd culture? It always needed. Subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss when we go deeper on the stories the mainstream tennis coverage won't touch. See you in the next one.